Hello everybody, thank you much for joining me today for another video in my Twilight Zone ranking series where I rank every episode of the original Twilight Zone from my least favorite to my favorite. So today I'm going to be talking about number 148 on my list, Still Valley, which was written by Rod Serling, but it was based on a story by Manny Wade Wellman, and this episode was directed by James Sheldon. As always, there will be episode spoilers. So Still Valley is kind of a strange episode, to be honest. It's about a Confederate soldier who meets a warlock who gives him a book which can basically help him change the history of the war because it freezes people in time. So it's kind of interesting because this episode has definitely some similarities to the one that I just talked about in my last video, Elegy. And although Still Valley is a much less popular episode, and I think it certainly has some issues, I actually think it's done slightly better than Elegy, which I will talk about now. So once again, the first thing I want to talk about is that once again, the people frozen in place trick. It's done the same way with real people, I believe. And I think it's slightly better here because it's used less in the episode, but it still doesn't really work. It's unfortunate that because of the technology of the time, they couldn't figure out a better way to do this type of gimmick. Also, this episode has got a very weird concept. It's kind of a mix of a war episode and a fantasy episode with fantasy elements. And while I appreciate trying to do something different, the two things don't necessarily gel well together. I will say I thought the musical score was interesting in this episode, and I did like the Warlock character played by Vaughn Taylor. I thought he was more interesting, much more interesting than the elderly gentleman in Elegy, the episode before. And Gary Merrill, who's the lead actor in this episode, does a solid job as well. But overall, the episode is just too slow, and like I said, the blend of the two genres doesn't really totally work here. You know, there is some nice cinematography as usual, but that kind of only carries the episode so far. And, you know, then the episode at the end is one of those that tries to have a moral message, and I actually really like this message. I think it gives a much better signal than the end of the last episode did. So this one's basically about where they debate and have a moral dilemma about whether they should use this book to maybe change their fortunes for the better. And it's decided that they're not going to change things even if it causes them to lose. So, you know, the message about keeping your morals and your values, even if it, you know, causes you to not be able to change things, is very interesting. But I will say that this message also kind of comes out of nowhere. There's no real build up to it, and it's one of those where Rod Serling maybe gets slightly preachy at the end. Feels like he has to kind of tack on a message. But, you know, like I said, it works okay. The ending's not terrible. This whole episode just feels like it's kind of there. There's a few interesting elements, but it also feels a little dated. And like I said, the illusion of people standing still, once again, isn't really convincing to me. So overall, I feel like this is a, you know, a slightly below average episode. That this is one of those I actually kind of forget about exists until I go through the rotation of all the episodes and say, oh yeah, Still Valley, I kind of remember that one. So, you know, it comes in at 148. It's just kind of an episode that's there for me, and that's where I rank Still Valley. But as always, feel free to leave me a comment on this one. Let me know if you like this episode or don't, if I ranked it too high or too low. Thanks for your continued support. Next up will be number 147 in the next video, and thanks for watching.